it's great to be back for Percussion Discussion, and this time we're revisiting Mr. Pick Withers. So it's great to have you back after a fabulous and very successful part one of the interview. How you doing, Pick?
I'm okay, Pick. I'm okay. I just wish this whole coronavirus thing was had an ending.
Yeah, hopefully sometime.
Like the song I once played with Dave Edmonds, and in what was called Rock Pile. Post I Hear You Knocking and stuff like that, and it was a great little band. It was Andy Fairweather on rhythm, a guy called John Williams who changed his name to John David on bass because of the obvious confusion, and yours truly. And it was the first time I wore earplugs because I just couldn't hear anything because Dave had this massive Fender Goliath amp, and he just basically played very, very loud and then louder, and we used to. The three of us used to put our heads down and say, "I'll see you at the end." But no, it was impossible to communicate. He played so loud. I with the earplugs, I could feel the vibrations of the cymbals through my limbs, and it kind of reassured me. Yeah. When I lived in Italy, when I worked in Italy for 3 years in the '60s, we did. I was part of a package tour with the Who. And that was to give you the time of it. It was Pictures of Lily sort of time. So they had Can't Explain, My Generation and stuff. And they had this, Mooney had this huge kit, Premiere kit with 2 bass drums. And one of the floor toms was just a table, really. It just had a towel on and stuff. But he had this thing. He had this. He had a dustbin lid painted white, as set up as a symbol. And in all the shows that they did, it was 2 a day. That's about the only thing I heard him play, because it just had this real cut through all the swathes of the sound that Townsend and Entwistle were generated. And there was a big backstage area. And what was really curious was that their show, basically it was a package tour where all these Italian bands and English bands living in Italy came on and filled up the first half of the show. Then there was an interval, and then they did all the second half, culminating in My Generation and complete chaos. You know, now people, of course, everybody was fascinated by Townsend, but as it got nearer and nearer, and then it became My Generation, when it got to the bass solo, the whole backstage area was completely empty, because if you were in that area, you were quite potentially a target for his destructive behavior. You know, it wasn't fascinating after a while. It was just kind of, and his roadie was borrowing guitars, because he did 9 shows, and by the 8th or 9th show, he didn't have a guitar to go on stage with. He just smithereens, you know, and they were swapping amps for guitars, and he was still doing it. And crazy days. That when we played at Palazzo del Sport in Rome. It's a big multi-purpose arena, and when they let some smoke bombs off, and the carabinieri, the police came on with thinking it was a fire, with a fire extinguisher, and Townsend just seized on the opportunity and kind of pushed him and grabbed the fire extinguisher, tried to get it going, and of course he was frog marched off the stage by all these Italian police. It was suitably chaotic, as it was in those days, you know. And Townsend once, Keith Moon once, he destroyed his drum kit, just threw it all parts, north, south, west and east, in My Generation, and then realised Townsend hadn't finished. So he jumped in the audience, grabbed a floor tom-tom, very robust, not like my Gretsch, the legs were still on it, and just began to play it. It just looked like somebody waving his hands around. And as I said, the only thing I heard him really play was the white dustbin lid.
Did you socialise much with Mooney?
No. They were in their own little bubble, if I can, steal a term from these days. They came to see us play at. He came to see us play at the Marquee in London. This would have been several years later, and he was trying to pull my missus, which is hilarious, you know. I
Oh,
don't think I was out with her then, but it was, you know, but yeah, no, I was. Oh, of course I was going over there. And I'm getting my timing right. And his accent changed 2 or 3 times. Once, at one time he'd be a country gent, then he'd be Cockney boy, and then he'd be something else, you know. And you know,
he's a one-off.
I enjoyed his playing, but I used to have won't get fooled again on my ringtone on my things. You know those power chords.
Yes.
Back, 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 and it was just fantastic. But I changed my phone, so I lost it. But where was I? I've forgotten where my thread was. I didn't really speak to him very much, but I'm kind of afraid of him really, because he was just an unknown, you know, quantity. He could be quite a bit like John Martin, God bless him. You know, there were some really wild characters around in those days, and you know, if they were on one, you either kind of went with them drink for drink or whatever, or you just left it alone. I mean, the craziest we got in Dire Straits was we celebrated a tour in Australia by jumping in the pool, and some of the roadies got the parasols at the poolside, turned them upside down, and worked out, played with gondolas. And I tend to shrink away from all that. Oh, we're going to be in trouble soon.
Yeah.
So I gave Mr. Moon quite a wide berth, really.
Yeah. It's like an unexploded.
I know what I say that ringtone. I had bought a best of The Who, and I'd seen them play live at the Marquee in Can't Explain days, and it was just electric. You know, when everything's just going past you like a sort of ticker tape.
Yeah.
You don't recognize certain things. You just absorb the energy and the visceral nature of it, and you're in a crowd, and it's just all kicking off, you know. But when you listen to the record, if you listen to I Can't Explain, yeah, within about 4 or 5 bars, there's a tambourine added to back up the offbeat.
Yeah.
Within about 4 or 5 bars, they're kind of flanging the snare and the tambourine. So they start off like a, and then they stop going a bit awry, you know. And I had that problem with Bert Jansch as well, because he picks with his thumb, very possibly, and sometimes it doesn't coincide with the drums, and it's very disconcerting. You do have to concentrate. And in fact, what really saved my bacon was that I had been, even in those days, I've been practicing with a metronome a lot at home. And I realized that this curious dilemma is that if you can't hear the metronome, you're in time.
Yeah.
And the minute you hear it, you're not. And that is that's something to get used to, that is, you know, because it's not, you expect to hear it because that's what you're conditioned to do. If you introduce something into your head, you expect to hear it, but when you're sort of in the pocket, so to speak, you can't hear it.
Absolutely.
And that's good. That's very good. Once I was at Rockfield, what's the guy's name? The producer who did Link Ray and people like that, he came to Rockfield, which is the studio in Monmouth, and he booked me for a session. And it was a reggae thing, a reggae type song. Well, it wasn't reggae; it was more like, you know, Western rock reggae. And he said, "I want a drum fill at the beginning, please." So somebody went 1, 2, 3, and we got about 2 beats. It's stop. Pick. That was great, but when we do it next time, I want you to do something bit more polite. I said, okay. So I have no idea what polite is, but so I just went 1, 2, 3, and he went great. And we were all
a pickup rather than a fill, then. Yeah.
The vagaries of studio work. You know?
Oh gosh. Hey, look, there's one person we didn't talk about last time, and that's Bob Dylan.
Oh yes, Mr. Zimmerman.
Oh, I'd love to, and I'm sure whoever's watching this would also like to hear a little bit about that.
Oh, it was great for me. It was really quite a breakthrough moment for me because I'd been listening a lot to Blood on the Tracks and Desire, not because I was being booked, because it came out of left field, really. Came from Jerry Wexler and Barry Beckett, who produced the Communique album.
Right, okay.
So, I got his phone call, and a part of me wanted to say no, because I was terrified of not, coming up to the mark, really, because he's one of my kind of, you sort of, it's what's the analogy I use? I use an analogy similar to, excuse me, the big money transfer at football. You've been headhunted because they like what they see, and all you've got to do is reproduce it.
Yes.
But you were reproducing it in different circumstances, So the first day was a disaster. I was just had the phones on, and we were doing one of the songs, and it was just running away all the time. So I had a meeting with. I stayed with Barry Beckett at Barry Beckett's house with Mark, myself. I don't know if Wexler was there, but he was around anyway. And he wasn't really around when we did the backing track, so he wasn't so evident. He was more the vocals and key executive decisions about when something didn't feel right, But Barry I'm going to take Bob's guitar out of your cans. Okay, so I think that's what's moving you around. And but he said, "I want you to do me a favor. When I ask you if the balance in the cans is okay, you say yes, but can I have a bit more Bob's guitar?" You're not getting any.
Yeah.
But I'd like you to say that. And that's what we did. And so that was it. But yeah, I mean, it was great for me because you get about you only get 2, maybe 3 takes at doing it, and then you just move on. Yeah. And the case in point was that basically Mark and I were only there for 10 days, and we had to go. So there was some concern about getting all our stuff done, and Mark was playing rhythm guitar and then doing lead fills as an overdub. So Wexler wanted to get all that tied up, and he wanted Bob to commit to a specific number of songs. And bearing in mind it's still vinyl in those days, 20 minutes is an optimum kind of level time frame for good sound resolution, So he wanted Bob to pick out some songs, and we picked out the songs that obviously went on the album. But one of them was When You're Gonna Wake Up, it was called. It was just basically a song that went round and round Dylan fashion with an A section and a B section. There was no chord, well, there was no bridge, no instrumental. It just went round and round and round. But there was about 20 verses. And Wexler said, it's too long. We need to cut it down. So Barry wanted to create a kind of a tape loop with the best sections of what the rhythm sections recorded up to that point. And he did a trial 30 edit point, almost like a PowerPoint presentation. And it sounded great. And he didn't have a voice on. And then Bob came in the next day and did a couple of takes. I don't like it. It's just, I don't like the feel of it, because he's basically, if he's not singing on the original track and his voice is an overdub, it doesn't really happen somehow. And so what they agreed to do was to edit the overlong track according to which verses and little choruses that Bob wanted to keep. And that's the way it was done. And it was far better that way, because people were sort of moving with the voice. I mean, I can hear it, but whether you can hear it or not, I don't know. It's called When You're Gonna Wake Up.
Oh, God.
Then there was just the one time that I spoke to him at any length. And it was just a brief conversation in the studio. Basically, he was sitting next to me and he was looking up at the speakers, listening to sound. It seems to me that he'd never recorded in this fashion, where you have a rhythm section, with the voice, not the vocals, no percussion, no overdubs with horns. You know, that comes later.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he was a little bit suspicious of this way of recording it first, but he became more comfortable with it. And he said I was just happened to be sitting next to him. I didn't kind of position myself there deliberately, but he said, look at this, it sounds so good. He said, it sounds good. And I'm used to making records like people make home movies. This way, and he keeps looking at the speakers, this way is more professional. And that was about the only time I spoke to him. But, you know, I got on really well with Tim Drummond.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed playing with him because he's one of those understated players that as things go on to the track, it just becomes, instead of disappearing because you were at the very beginning, his sound seems to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's, you know, never to be underestimated. A good bass player and drummer relationship is just, it always reminds me of that dreadful sequence in the O.J. Simpson trial when he puts the glove on. Do you remember that?
I don't, I'll be honest.
Oh, it's just horrible. It's horrible. But sometimes you can have a really nice glove and a really nice hand, bass and drums, and they just don't, somehow they don't gel. It sounds okay, but there's a little bit of, you know, it's like no suspension or something like that, or a buckled wheel.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, but that was my experience with Mr. Zimmerman, really.
It's a great experience to have.
You had to really concentrate because there was very little rehearsal. When we rehearsed, if there was any rehearsal at all, it was around a piano in the studio with a makeshift drum kit and just a quick run through. And then you had to really get the arrangement down, and you had 2 or 3 takes to do it, really. But I was used to head arrangements anyway by then, because that's my one big regret, is that I'm not a fantastic reader. I can read, but I've never used it. And the one time I did have to use it, it was a disaster. It was in a cabaret, you know, when I worked at Rockfield. We were in, I was on a kind of a retainer from Kingsley and Charles, the brothers Ward, who ran the studio. And this pick, so whether I worked or not, I was guaranteed this money. But he phoned me up one day, said, can you go over to Abergavenny, which is the next market town? There's a little nightclub there above Burton's. They need a drummer. And I went over there, it's just a long, long week. There was this keyboard player there, organ player. He looked a dead ringer for Mr. Pastry on the television. And he said, Picky baby, you're late. And we just basically played all this. He played A Taste of Honey as his kind of signature tune, you know, on a Lowry organ. And he had this awful approach. It was, and you couldn't feel it. It was like walking on glass, you know, and I just couldn't get it. But the main part of the evening, we had to back the cabaret, which was a London impressionist who was very snappy. His name was Tony Benner. And the first night was disaster because basically his music was in these lovely little folders, and it just said basically Henry Cooper sketch, punchline, splash it all over. That was his cue for the next, to segue into the next thing, which would have been Satisfaction if he was doing a Mick Jagger impression, you know. Mr. Pastry had these Alec Hume glasses, and he was looking over the thing, splash it all over, cue. Oh, one. And the guy's going, come on. So we had this meeting at the end of the evening, and he made himself clear in no uncertain terms how crap we were. And I sort of got it in one. So the next night, splash it all over. I went, great. Bah, bah. And he went, great. And Mr. Pastry goes, you started without me. I'm the MD. And at the end of the week, the guy was wanting me to join, to be a double act with him. Thankfully, I didn't do it. I don't think it would have lasted very long, but it was quite a long week. He had me singing and everything, Mr. Pastry did. But the worst thing was that in the second set we did prior to the cabaret, he Taste of Honey came out, and I didn't know he had a recording facility in the organ. He's going, "Look, no hands," and I'm just playing there like a prat, like, and they're going, "Where is this bloody beat? Is it a shuffle? Is it eight? Oh, it's just, you've got to be so careful in those things because you can unravel. You know, drumming is such a kind of not so much a physical thing exclusively, but a very kind of rhythmic movement.
Yeah,
you know, and if somebody messes with you, it's just really hard, because it's a lot of that is to do with confidence. You know. Go on.
So hey, look, I know it's all useful stuff and interesting stuff. Now, last time we left it around about the Communique album, so I would like to pick up into the third album, if possible, Making Movies. And there's a standout track for me. You're playing on it is beautiful. Skate Away.
Oh, good lad, good lad.
Oh, what a...
That's likes it. Well, the whole thing about that was I have to tip my cap to Shelley Yakis, which is Jimmy Iovine's engineer. He did a couple of things for me, which I would never have done. He insisted we try diplomat heads on the drums, which don't last very long because they're very thin, but they're very bright and sparkly. After about 3 or 4 takes, you change them, which is very arduous, you know. And the other thing, especially as you say Skate Away, he gave me these pair of dreadful hi-hats. They were like sponge. And he said, look, no, he said, the thing about these is they work beautifully because they're not very bright. They don't bleed down the other microphones, and I can add all the EQ on the desk, you know. So that was that part of it. Now the track is it's just one take, really. I mean, it might have been take 3, take 4 or something, because basically you have to really. I don't think you can really imagine what the finished article is like, but you basically have Mark is trying to cover all bases. He's playing a bit of rhythm, a bit of lead. He's giving you some clues about what the vocal is, and he's just grooving on your drums. Yeah. And John hasn't really formulated a part, really. So he would just come along, and you have to really, I don't know, go for it, so to speak. And what I would say about it is, when you know you're in the pocket, there is a certain point where it's almost like the roller coaster at the fairground. You hear it click, it just jumps in, and all of a sudden it has a momentum of its own. It's almost like surfing. You know, you just ride with it, you know, and just go with it for as long as possible.
It's a lovely song. It's a great.
I do like that track. I'm very pleased with that track. You know,
it's a really lovely pocket. The feel is just and the drums.
And also, what helped was that we had Roy Bitton from the E Street Band playing keys, so I was locking onto him as well. I forgot. So not very smart of me to just forget that, because he was just fabulous to be around. Something to kind of like at the hub, so you could move around it a little bit rather than be stuck in this very narrow band of rhythm, because you're not getting enough information. No. So that was that. But that was the main thing about that. The diplomats and the cheap hi-hats, which enabled him to, do his thing. We had things like blankets all over the bass drum, so it was just anything you can do to kind of minimize the bleed of any one individual item down and on a microphone. So you've got more kind of control over the individual sounds, rather than it being, when you change the tom-tom sound, the tom-tom, you change the other sound as well, because you're getting a lot of bleed.
Of course. But I tell you, the overall result, The result,
Sorry?
the overall result was great because it was a great kit sound in the end. I think it was personally.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. It's good. It was part of a Gretsch kit that I got. I used to go to a place called Drummers World, which is now just a mail order or online. A very good friend of mine called Barry Greenspon, and he was in Times Square. I used to go there a lot. And it was just exclusive drum store, no guitars, and because normally you have to go through. They've got any drums in here, mate? Yeah, in the back, all the guitars. But
Yeah.
so you wouldn't see. He would make it a point of introducing me to people who were in there that I wouldn't know from Harry.
Yeah.
One guy was a symphonic player who was really charming, and he was interested in what I did, genuinely, not lip service. Because in those times in London, you met a classical player. Pretty difficult to meet them, but if you did meet them, they would be quite dismissive. They would say, "Oh, you play in a group, don't you?" Stuff like that. And anyway, one of these guys, I was waiting to be served, and this guy was talking with length about. He said, "Right, I see you. I'm going down Third Avenue now. I've seen some symbols." And I said, when he'd gone, I said to Barry, "Where's he going?" He said, "Oh, you don't want to go there." I said, "Well, where's he going?" He said, "Oh, he's going to a pawn shop." What? I mean, a pawnbroker's. He said, "Yeah, it's got a big drum room, and he's going down there so he can get a cymbal." So I said, "Oh, I think I'd like to go there, Barry." He says, "Well, I'll give you the address, but keep your wits about you." So, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, don't sort of dither around. Just go in there. If you like something, barter for it, and if you don't hang around, because it's just not. It's a seedy part of town. It's on Third Avenue, way down past Greenwich Village somewhere. I can't remember, but I can picture it." So I went down there, and you go in, and it's just this room, just packed to the rafters with guitars and things, and unsavoury characters hanging around on street corners. And then you're waiting, and of course we're so British, we're so polite. You just sit there waiting for you, and then somebody seizes money. "What do you want?" And you feel it's a bit brusque, but it's just them trying to get things moving.
Yeah.
So I'm standing there, and this guy comes in very furtively, and he goes up to the guy, and the guy behind the counter, "Yeah," he said. He just rolls his sleeve up, and he's got about 6 watches there, and the guy's going, "Come back later." Later, And then he's, "What do you want?" I said, "I'd like to see some drums, please." He says, "Come back on Monday." Oh, so that was me dispensed with, and I did go back on a Monday. It was just a simple, pragmatic decision on his part that there was nobody to show me upstairs, and he didn't trust anybody. And I was included in that. So I went back on a Monday, and I went up to this room on the first floor, and it was an Aladdin's cave. It had, I had mixed feelings about it. It was just full of the old tom-toms that you see on black and white movies with the rivets, big round rivets. And I had this awful kind of feeling that there was a lot of kind of sadness in the room, the vibe. And I was imagining that there'd be people who started off on a tour in Los Angeles, come all the way across to New York. And in the old, we even used to do it in Germany as well. You got a steep end, and then at the end of the tour, you got your full whack.
Yeah.
So you didn't get. So if you were going to say, for example, if you were going to be paid $5,000 to do a tour, you didn't get, and it was 4 weeks. You didn't get 1,250 after week 1 and in 4 increments. You just probably got about $500, or something, and a per diem. Yeah. And then you thought, "Oh, great! Tomorrow, I'm owed 2,000," and then all the deductions would start. And I think that's what happened to these guys. They just didn't get the money they were anticipating getting, pawned their kits. And that's where I bought the Gretsch kit that I used on making movies.
Yeah.
Oh, partly anyway. I still have it. Yeah. But it's odds and sods. But the guy knew his onions. If I was expecting to get it cheaply, that wasn't going to happen at all.
Wouldn't it be nice to know the history of where that had been before you've had it?
Well, yeah. If you know any clairvoyants, I don't know.
Absolutely.
You know, it's I was more interested in the old ones, you know,
Mm-mm.
because I think I told you before that when my first kit was an Ajax kit, and it only had a bass, one rack tom. It didn't have a floor tom,
Yeah.
and I thought, you know, but I have seen footage recently, black and white footage of the vintage stuff from the 20s and 30s, and that constitutes a kit.
Yeah. Standard. Yeah.
Now a floor tom. Floor tom was a later
Mm.
um, addition.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would take vintage any day over the modern stuff personally. I like the sound. I like the story of it, you know, and
Yeah. I'm just I don't know why bass drums have to be so long these days. You know,
no.
I used to find that certain bass drums on a hollow stage, when you're miking up and going through a PA, they would have a certain resonance that led to feedback.
Yeah.
And if you could carry maybe 3 bass drums, an 18, a 20, and a 24, 22 or something, you could cover that by switching the bass. And so that's what I have today. I have an 18, I have a 20, I have a 22, and I have a big 24, or it might be a 26 Yamaha, and I keep like fiddling with, you know, with the bass stick and the bass drum at the same time. I've seen that they use in New Orleans. It's great. You know, I really enjoy stuff like that.
Big old drum, that though. 26. Wow. That's.
I think Bonham used to use one.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine trying to fit a tom on top of that. It'd have to be.
Well, you don't. You fit it on the side, and you have to move around, or you know. I mean, it depends how badly you want to use it. You know?
I suppose.
And if you use it with a stick, it's really interesting because you can get a bit more expression from it.
Yeah.
But of course, these days you're always at the mercy of the sound guy.
Exactly.
You know, unless you're playing acoustically.
Yeah.
Which is what I prefer these days. You know.
Absolutely.
Because you're always walking into a room where you never met the guy before, and it doesn't matter how good he is. His idea of what sounds good might not be what your idea of is sounds good. You know. Absolutely. In fact, there's a Dave Mattox. He tells a lovely story where he just, because some engineers are quite kind of clinical about when you play the tom-toms, the snare drums will resonate. Mm-hmm. Snares underneath, and some engineers will become obsessed with that sound and want it to be reduced, and the only way you can reduce that is by messing with the sound of the toms. Well, Mattox didn't want to do that. He had his toms the way he wanted, so he would just, when he was asked to do the sound check, he would just cough and switch the snares off. So you couldn't hear it. And, oh yeah, they sound good. Give a snare. You got a cough? No, I'm all right now.
And so Dave Mattox, he was like the authority. Well, he still is the authority on drum tuning as well. He was a real master.
Is he really? I don't know, because he's in America now, so I don't.
Yeah, I've seen him a few times with Fairport and different bands, and I've even seen him do a masterclass on tuning, and he is exceptionally gifted at it. Well, I think anyone's as gifted as they want to be at it, aren't they? You know, if you're going to put the hours in and.
Yeah, and probably changing the skins more frequently than we do.
Yeah.
There is something about new skins.
Yeah.
That they just have that warmth that tends to go away when that elasticity starts to go. What is it? Torque? I don't know what you call it.
Yeah.
But it goes, and you get this awful, like what I call a tennis ball, beach ball sound. Ping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time to change, but it's expensive, so
it's a lot more expensive than it used
soldier on.
Yeah.
Soldier.
Absolutely. Now look, Pick, how had touring changed sort of by the time album 3 was out and about, and had it changed massively for you from like the first album?
Well, just bigger stages, really.
Yeah. So
a bigger sound.
Yeah.
Gave me problems because the monitors were starting to get louder, and I found that it was taking away my sound at source.
Yeah.
So I was either trying too hard sometimes to beef it up, or I was just swamped.
Yeah.
by sound. But it's like a lot of things. It's basically you learn that if you're in a 5-piece band, which it became eventually before I left, you can have 5 different versions of what the gig was like.
Mm.
You know, I mean, I could walk off stage. Oh, I enjoyed that. Oh, I didn't like it at all. Somebody else said I couldn't hear your drums. I said I could hear everything you played on the bass.
Mm.
You know, or and then one of those rare occasions when everybody feels the same, and they have the same sonic experience, and you play for each other, and they're the gigs you kind of hang out for.
Yeah.
You know, and the trick really is to have a bit more grace about waiting for that peak.
Yeah.
You know, rather than being disconsolate or miserable or, you know, complaining, because it's just all, it really is up to you. And sometimes I think the biggest beef is that your sound engineer you have to trust them. They say, sounded great at the sound check. I don't know what you did. You all turned up, but I just couldn't get that sound again. You know, it was okay, but it wasn't as good as the sound check. And I do think there's a bit of that goes on when you're confronted by people. And I think it's much easier to do that on the guitar and the keys than it is on the drums, because it took me a long time to really realize that it's not an exponential thing with the drums. You can't just keep hitting it harder and harder and getting louder and louder. There's an optimum point at which it's a diminishing return. And I think it took me quite a long time to be comfortable with, this is as loud as I'm going to play. And it's up to you now. If you can't hear me, you're too loud.
Exactly.
You know, and that takes a while to have the, I don't know, confidence, because you can't do that in a sort of in a fashion that's like, you know, sod you, this is the way it's going to go. You've got to sort of flesh it out by saying, this is the way I want to play. And in fact, I used to try and champion that, because we went to see The Last Waltz. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
By Martin, it was filmed by Martin Scorsese with the band, with various people coming on. It's a great clip of Dylan with the hat.
I can't remember, but I must revisit.
Well, you remember it when you see it. Oh yeah. And I was saying, look, Lee Van Helm is not whacking shit out of those drums. He's committed, but he's not. And that's the way we should play, because you can, I don't know, you can kind of manipulate stuff more like that. If you're at the peak of your physical, you know, fortissimo thing, there's nowhere to go.
And the drums choke up anyway at that point, don't they? Really?
Sorry?
The drums
they choke. Yeah, but also it's just like, it's like doing 10 rounds with somebody. You know, after about 5 minutes, you just wasted. Just your head is just kind of, you know, you can't think at all.
Yeah.
So, but it's very much a guitar thing, I think. There's the guitars obviously sound great at its optimum level to certain guys, and that's what they want, and I can see why that is. But I tend to try and steer away from it, because I just don't get much out of a gig with a guitar. I don't care how good the guitar player is. If he's going to play that loud, I can't really have a conversation music with them at all. You know, it's virtually impossible to do it. You just hang on. It's almost like the boxer on the ropes. Just ring the bloody bell, will you? I'm not going down. I'm not going to give up, but I've had enough.
I can imagine. I mean, I like to play at a comfortable level. I'm not a loud player anymore. I don't like the blisters. But the drums sound nice at a certain volume, at a certain level,
yes,
don't they? And the cymbals, same, you know. So that's the third album. Now, fourth album, was the fourth one the last one? Yeah, yeah.
That was odd for me, really, because that was when Mark was producing it with Neil Dorfman, I think, the engineer. And I think he was desperate to, I mean, there's some good tracks on that, but the drums, there was probably 2 weeks when I didn't do anything at all. You know, I mean, it was Industrial Disease on that one. Do you know the tracks?
I know a few.
One of the tracks is with with a drum machine, and we programmed a drum machine. And I programmed it, what the part was, from our rehearsals acoustically. Yeah. This is what I played. So we put that in, and then I played along with the drum track. Yeah. I think I did 2 takes, and then they went in and said, and they were looking for possible flaws or where the beats dragged, sped up, and there was nothing there. Yeah, yeah. So it was perfect. It was right in with it, and then we changed the sounds on the drum machine to more industrial things like hissing and steam and things, because it was all in time. Yeah. But this, for 2 weeks, I didn't do anything. Just they did guitar sounds. Yes. And expand. Yeah, and it sounds great, but it didn't really involve me, and I just sort of became, I don't know, detached in a way from the process, because it's just to sit there for 2 weeks listening to guitars. It's it's not what I do. Yeah. And just sit around and being supportive. In the end, you just think, oh, I want to rest my ears. Yeah. I want to, it's New York's out there. Yeah. I want to kind of experience a bit of New York. On that drum thing, the drum machine, I did an album, did some tracks with Gerry Rafferty at Strawberry Fields South in Dorking. And one day there was a proper rhythm section, and you live in there, stay in the building. And one day the producer, forget what his name was, he said, look, Jerry's got to go to a function, but I want you to come in and we want to work on this track that we're doing. It was like a Ketty Lester song, Love Letters Straight from My Heart. 6/8, like Nights in White Satin or something. Very sharp. And the guy programmed a drum machine, and I played along, and he was very pleased. He said, oh, I like that. So I don't like that at all. It's just it's the feel. Where's the feel? He said, oh, don't worry about that. He said, look, there's your drums. There's the machine. Look, they're in sync. Take your drums out. Bring them back. Look, perfect timing. Take the machine out. Look, it's just great. Don't you worry about it. Send Mo up to play the bass. So we went through this whole process of one by one, and everybody said the same thing. It's just, don't like it. It's a bit wooden, really. No, don't you worry about that. He just went on keyboards, and then Gerry came in, sang twice. Said, oh, it's a bit wooden. So it was dropped. So it was a day. Yeah,
you won't get that one back.
They've gone around the antique shops in Dorking.
So around this time then, Pick, had that kind of signalled the end for you with Dire Straits? Had you made up your mind at this point, or was it further along when you've...
No, it's just, the whole thing was just very incremental, basically. Yeah. All different strands going on, and so I decided that it would be best to leave. I don't really want to touch upon it, really, because some of it's personal.
Yeah, of course.
Just more to do with the volume. Yeah. I was starting to have trouble with my ears. I should have realised a long time before my balance was a bit dicky after 2 hours of playing. I should have noticed. I should have realised that was a early warning for me.
Yeah.
I was having too much of a barrage in my ears, but of course I just didn't pick up on it at all. I just thought, oh, it's like you play the drums for 2 hours. It's a bit like getting off a boat. You're sea legs, and then I'll be all right. And I was all right after a while, but it was a way of really a warning that I didn't pick up on.
Yeah.
So that was a certain element of it as well. Yeah. So but there are many strands to that.
But
perhaps I'll put it in a book one day.
Yeah, I'll read it. But you've left an incredible legacy of music there, though. You must look back on that with pride, because there's some amazing.
It's pretty difficult at first. It took me a while to really listen to the first album, but when I listen to it now, it's just really has fantastic atmosphere about it, and there's some stuff on, because you always get into that situation where your first album, you'll cherry picking all the best songs
Yeah.
from Mark's life so far. Then you've got Communique, which is right. We've had all your best songs. Now we need some more songs, but we need them in 6 months, not in 10 years. And I like a lot of Communique. I like Once Upon a Time in the West. I like Where Do You Think You're Going? I like Follow Me Home. And then there's some stuff that is just, I don't know, it's okay. Yeah. It's a Single-Handed Sailor. I'm not sure as it's, and Lady Writer seems like a version 2 of Sultans of Swing.
Yeah.
The way, and there's no way, I'm loath to sort of flag it up because I wasn't really writing any stuff. I was more arranging. I like to arrange, especially for live stuff. Come up with beginnings, endings, dynamics, stuff like that. So that was where I felt I could be more involved. And once your involvement starts to, once you're marginalised, then I think it's just cutting off my creativity, my desire to be a part of the conversation. And also the whole thing of one of the things that really, one of those increments I was talking about, we did a tour in England, and Southampton, I remember it well, Civic Hall, whatever it was. And we had a meeting prior to this gig, and it was said that after Southampton, we have to go to Germany. We have to fly to Germany to do a rock palace. Yep. So I want all the best gear to go there. So I want you to get all your stuff out of storage to do the Southampton gig as a one-off. And then that will go back to London, and you'll fly out from Southampton to do the rock palace. So I arranged it with the roadie to, it's all covered. Don't worry, Pick. I get to Southampton. There's no bass drum. It's been left somewhere, lost somewhere. And it comes down. It's not my bass drum. It's somebody else's. It's not a matching kit. Don't sound too good. I'm sure it sounded fine outside, but I was probably the height of my stroppiness in those days, and I just thought, this is charming, innit? I really didn't like it, and I probably didn't disguise it very much. But anyway, for the story, we basically have a set list and we have 2 or 3 encores. So we did the 3rd encore. I know there's no more stuff after this. So I did a Keith Moon and just boom, and just kicked all the stuff off and walked off and sat in the dressing room. I thought, I'm going to get my arse kicked now. Sat there waiting, and they charged in, and that was great. Are you going to do that tomorrow night? That's not what is that what we've become? A kind of, a series of, and then another time there was not related, but you go to a sound check, and the lighting guy would see, Pick, I've got a special spot on you tonight. You twiddled your stick last night at a certain point, and I want to highlight that. And did I? Yeah, you did in one of the songs. I think it's this song. So when is that? Well, I don't know. I can't remember that. I'll try and remember. Well, you got to do it because I want to pick it up. So you feel this kind of straitjacket coming on you, and basically what happens is you get to the point where, this is where I do this. This is where I jump up. This is where I, and I don't know. It just feels like the football team who loses its creativity and scores from corners and free kicks, and you go there, he goes there, and I go through there, and it's all valid, of course, but it's
less about the music. Yeah, I get that.
But there is a certain element where you think, well, I should, make show. But I like to make show spontaneously.
Yeah, well, that's what it's about, isn't it? It's genuine then, isn't it?
Well, maybe not in show business. Maybe you have to, you have to do all these things, jump through these hoops. And the Americans are very good at it. Yeah. As I always say, when Jimi Hendrix first came over, he has a song called Fire.
Yes.
There are some power chords before the solo, a bit like Townsend. He says, "Move over, Rover, let Jimmy take over." And he's the only guy I know who can get away with that. And you buy it. You think, that's great. But somebody else says it, you get lost. Move over, let James take over. What kind of kind of a rock and roller are you? But he does it, and it's with panache, and I think the Americans are good at that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it sounds cool, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds cool from him, but then I guess it's in reverse. You know, when I went to America, you know, we did the Dylan thing in Muscle Shoals in Alabama, which is, you know, Clark's country.
Yes.
Lesser. And sometimes if they were doing a gospel day, the girls, I think, can I go and see some cowboy boots, please? And said, yeah, there we go. I looked after you and said, yeah, I'll take this shot. And, oh, I just love the way you talk. Are you from England? Yes. Said, oh, have you met the Queen? Is she nice? I said, I haven't met the Queen. And there's a sort of mixture of, they're disappointed. And England's a nice village, isn't it? I just love the way you talk. America's a big, big place, you know.
Absolutely. I've never been, you know.
Oh, you must go. Stay on the eastern seaboard or the western seaboard, or hire a car and go across.
That sounds good.
To me, it was fantastic the first time I went, because it put all the kind of visuals on some of the songs that I'm going to Kansas City, here. We were going to Kansas City, you know.
Yeah.
But the biggest disappointment was the first tour was that we did a lot of radio in the towns, in the towns where we were playing, and we were expecting or anticipating going in there and saying, can we play some records? And it was already the carousel notion over there by then. It was where you can play anything on that carousel A. We can play that 5 times a day, and it's got a number on it. If it says 5 on it, you can't play anymore. And then can I play this? No, we've already played it. And so we thought we were going to, you know, play all the great R&B stuff, Bobby Blue Band, and it's already changing in the 70s, you know.
Shame.
So yes, it's like all things, you know. It just stands still, you know.
So look, what's happening? Are you up to anything at the moment, Pick? Are you got anything exciting happening?
I'm just practicing a lot.
Yeah, good.
As I think we touched upon before we press record, I'm trying to do a little, trying to get in my head together to do a little presentation to help players be not to play like me or to play like somebody else, to be the best that they can play. Yeah. So I've started to build up these 2 or 3 exercises that are guaranteed to improve the way you already play. Mm-hmm. And it's to do with stroke production and authority, and that thing we touched upon, not technique, touch.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm sure I dare say that when I eventually do it, somebody said, well, I've seen it all before, you know, but because there's so much YouTube out there now, there's almost too much information.
Yes.
But I've got some exercises that really do help you to just, I don't know, improve, you know. Yeah. I did some teaching in a comprehensive school for 2 years.
Yeah.
My daughter was a pupil there. She said, they need a drum teacher, Dad. Will you do it? The clincher for me was there was a drum kit there.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to do anything. And they used to give me this roster of boys and girls. The girls were much better because they listened.
Yeah.
Boys just wanted, give me the sticks. But there was one guy in the first year, I couldn't teach him anything. You know, I used to get him to, can you just play something? And he would play this beat, and it would be. I said, that's very good. I said, James, can you play? He went, yeah. That's all we did for a whole 6 months. And I said, look, it's not, you play, and I play. And if we put them together, it sounds like this. So you're not playing what I asked you to play. Yeah. And in the end, I said, look, an old comprehensive school where they have faculties in isolation and in between, and lots of grass. Nice, but, you know, hot in the summer and rather cold in the winter, you know, lots of condensation in the summer. So I said, look, I've got it. Today, you just play the top, and I'm going to get down on my hands and knees, and I'm going to grab your foot, and I'm going to push it in the right places so you can hear the difference, like this. I grabbed his foot because he was sitting at the kit, and I felt this horrible kind of gooey deposit on my hands, and it was, sure enough, it was a dog turd.
Oh.
And I looked up at him, and beseechingly I said, that sums our relationship up, doesn't it? After this half-term break, will you consider whether you want to come back? Because your mum and dad pay money for this, you know, and we haven't got anywhere.
Yeah.
And I do rather suspect he was just a junket for him to avoid maths or something like that. Thankfully, he didn't come back because it was so frustrating. But I learnt a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Not about dog poo, but about how to present stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh well, I'll look forward to seeing the finish.
I do. You?
Yeah. Well, hey, I'll
come over and see you once all this Boris nonsense is over.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. Well, look, Pick. Thank you for spending all this time, and we've done it in 2 hits. I really appreciate you giving your time up. I know you're a busy man.
Right.
You've had to tear yourself away from the kit, and it's appreciated. I know the first video alone on YouTube without Facebook has had over 2,500 views now, so which is phenomenal. It really is. So thank you very much for doing this. Appreciate it. I'll see you next time.
Forza Roma.
Take care. Thank you.